I want to just take this walk with them. And so I think it's so important to go back and just look at your childhood, because a lot of our personalities, this type A, this perfectionism, this, wanting to be strong, not wanting to show vulnerability, always being the helper, right? We got a lot of fixers around here, a lot of people who just thrive off of fixing other people's stuff, because that is the role they are so comfortable with, because it's the role that they were assigned so long ago that they don't even know they're doing it. They just naturally kind of jump into those roles. And so those are the leaders. They are leaders in their communities. They are leaders at their job, but not understanding how that can get tiring.
Hey y'all, it's Sierra. Make sure you head over to shoplegacysbks.com to check out the latest gear. As always, we have the classic Therapy is Dope crew neck as well as tees. So head over to cop your crew neck today. It comes in heather navy, that cardinal red, as well as that beautiful gold that we love to see. So head over to purchase yours, not only for yourself, but also for a friend as well. And we are offering free shipping right now. So head over to shoplegacysbks.com to cop all of your Therapy's Dope gear and check out all the other additional merch as well. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Legacy Speaks. My name is Sierra Hilsman, licensed professional counselor and emotional wellness coach. Today, we're going to have another amazing conversation with another dope therapist, and I'm super excited to bring her on. But before we dive right in, I need you to hit that subscription button below. That way you can stay up to date on newly released content on a regular basis. So y'all, I would like to introduce you to Miss Shakenya Burch-Oliver. How are you, Shakenya?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, girl. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm hanging in there. Busy as ever, but I'm hanging in there.
And obviously, spring is coming through and everybody's coming up for air. They're excited to find their therapists and whatnot.
Oh my God. These inquiries are popping right now. Therapy is a hot commodity.
Listen, that's exciting. So shout out to everybody who's on their wellness journey and finding their therapist. Yeah. But today we're going to talk about relational trauma, which is your specialty. And I'm super excited because obviously trauma is a huge buzzword. We hear that often. And so can you let the people know a little bit more about what relational trauma is and what it actually looks like?
Yeah, so relational trauma, you think about relationships, right? So I primarily work with Black women who are in professions where they are maybe very strong. It's very male-dominated populations. So tech, healthcare, as far as like doctors, lawyers, things of that nature. And so seeing this trend of a lot of the strong Black women, which we hear a lot about, but really my role in that is really to kind of get to the root of that. And so relational trauma comes into play because it really deals with those roles that you had with your primary supports. So your caregivers, whether it was your parents or if you grew up with grandma, whoever you grew up with, whoever was your, primary relational person in childhood is kind of my role, right? Mm-hmm. And so I know there's developmental trauma and then there's relational trauma, right? And so developmental trauma deals more with attachment, things of that nature, but it also deals with like intergenerational trauma, those things that have been passed down. And us being Black people, we deal a lot with intergenerational trauma, meaning if our ancestors dealt with some form of trauma, those things get passed down via our DNA. And so if our mom was traumatized, if our dad was traumatized, those things can get passed down even through semen. I don't know if we can say semen.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can, because we all grown here. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay. So, but with me, yes, I think that's a part of it. And I think I incorporate both But the reason I identify as relational trauma is because I really just look at those primary relationships. I look at did you have to take on a role of this reverse role of now I feel like the primary caregiver in this home where my parent is oversharing. I know every time my mom breaks up with a person, I know every time my dad is, cheating or sleeping with this woman or doing these things that I should not be knowing as a child. Information I should not be privileged to. I now have this firsthand look experience with, and it causes, different types of psychological issues that develop later on in life.
Absolutely. Thank you so
I'm sure
much
that
for
answered everything.
it. Did y'all if y'all didn't get anything from that, please make sure that you are following Shakenya at heal_with_Ken, because she's dropping gems and she's about to drop some more gems. And thank you for differentiating that, right? So when we think about developmental trauma, we're thinking about like the epigenetics, the DNA component, like you mentioned, all the traumatic events, or maybe even markers that occur from one generation to the next. But the beautiful thing that you typically focus on is like those exchanges that happen interpersonally, which is very important, because there's some individuals and especially when we're working with clients with the history of trauma, it's like one of the core things that we always ask them is, when did this start? Or who did you pick this up from? Or when was the first time you experienced this? And it causes the clients to sit back and widen the scope across their lifespan, rather than just focusing on their presenting concerns, so to speak.
Absolutely. I always use this trauma lens when I tell my clients this first few sessions, I really just want to get to know you. I know a lot of them be ready to jump in. I had a relationship and I need to get to the bottom of it. Or, my mom is pissing me off and this is a very triggering situation. And I think we definitely need to get to that. But I always tell them, I really want to understand how we got here first. Let's take it all the way back. Because when you say something, when you tell me mom done pissed you off, or this coworker done pissed you off, now we can maybe see how it connects to something that happened when you were 6 years old, right? We can kind of put those pieces together. I want to just take this walk with them. And so I think it's so important to go back and just look at your childhood, because a lot of our personalities, this type A, this perfectionism, this, wanting to be strong, not wanting to show vulnerability, always being the helper, right? We got a lot of fixers around here, a lot of people who just thrive off of fixing other people's stuff, because that is the role they are so comfortable with, because it's the role that they were assigned so long ago that they don't even know they're doing it. They just naturally kind of jump into those roles. And so those are the leaders. They are leaders in their communities. They are leaders at their job, but not understanding how that can get tiring. And I'm exhausted just talking about it. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And there's so much duality, right? So what you talked about, how like these are beautiful qualities, being a leader, being the person that's reliable, the one that shows up, the change makers. However, like most of that behavior is rooted in being the parentified child, being the perfectionist, being heavily criticized over time. And so one of the things that you mentioned that really stood out to me, which was very beautiful, you said, I want to take this walk with them. I want to take this journey with them. And so can you speak to how you make it safe to even take that walk when it comes to addressing that childhood trauma? Hey, lovely. Shout out to you, because I know mental and emotional wellness is important to you. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. But lean in really quickly, because I know sometimes it's really hard to create a plan and actually sticking to it. So let's take your mental health to another level. Ever wonder what keeps you from fully executing? Ever wonder how you can build the confidence for decision making? Well, guess what? You're not alone, and I'm here to help. So head over to mentalhealthgoals.com for your free mental health plan. It'll give you practical strategies for addressing your current mental health needs. But first, you got to tap in. So head over to mentalhealthgoals.com to receive your free mental health action plan today. Do it right now. mentalhealthgoals.com. See you soon.
Yeah. And you know what I thought about when you said making it safe? The first thing that I've never had a client that hasn't done this, especially when it's their first time um, coming. And it's crazy because maybe there's this stigma that, oh, I dislike my parents and da 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 da. But I found the opposite to be true, that people come into therapy and the first thing they do is want to defend their parents, right? Like, I'm like, well, tell me about, and how was that for you? And before they can tell me about the the tragic things that may have happened, or the maybe not so comfortable things, because it doesn't have to be tragic, but maybe
Mhm.
this person hurt my feelings, or this person was a little cold, or I really had to comfort my mom more than I thought was probably normal. But before they even say that, they have to put this defense. The first thing that comes is like, well, this person loved me and she da 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 da, or he da 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 da. And I have to let them know, listen, I get it. Two things can be true. This person could be loving and amazing and also did some things that, hurt you or harmed you, or things that made you feel uncomfortable. And so, really normalizing what they're experiencing, getting there with the client and letting them know, hey, I get it. Listen, I love my mom to death. And we've also had our own journey and our own experience. So just letting them know that you're not alone, letting them know that this is normal. I'm not bashing your mama or your daddy or your grandma. I'm really just helping you understand what happened to you. So this is a place you can disarm. Your mama she ain't in the back listening, right? She's not gonna come whoop you or shame or whatever if you tell me this thing. So I think that's a part of it, just understanding. I've been doing this for so long that I kind of know what to expect. I know
Mhm.
when that the fence is up, and just being able to say certain buzzwords or reassuring them is a thing. So that's kind of how I walk and make it safe, really using a trauma informed approach, really listening. I'm a narrative therapist, and I'm also a clinical supervisor. So I may have supervisees that come in and are like, well, I feel like this person's super resistant. I'm like, listen, she don't know you or he don't know
Right.
you. Nobody's just gonna come and tell you all their business and they don't know you. And trying to force somebody or not normalizing that fear is, it's gonna do more harm, and it's not gonna make people feel disarmed enough to have conversation. Doing
Absolutely.
my own work was probably the most humbling thing. Sitting on the other side of that chair and being in the therapy, in the client seat, I'm like, whoo, it's hot, and I'm a whole therapist, but I'm like, it's it's a humbling experience. So I try to
Absolutely.
remember that.
Absolutely. And I appreciate speaking to therapists with therapists as well. I remember
Mhm.
when I was in my graduate school program, our program required us to go to therapy. They were
Wow.
just like, you have the counseling center. If you would like to utilize our services, obviously your tuition is paying for it, so you might as well. But the reason why they really wanted to hone in on that is because we needed to know what it felt like to be on both sides of the couch. And I find that to be very important. And so thank you for highlighting that, because you probably set a lot of people free, not just clients who feel like it's awkward when it comes to like showcasing their emotions or sharing how they truly feel. It's just like, yes, I'm paying you to be here, but I still gotta like warm up to you. I still gotta make sure that you are creating an emotionally and psychologically safe space, one. And also
Absolutely.
you probably freed up that new clinician that's just kind of like, man, this client is resistant. We don't like labeling clients as resistant. Like,
Mhm.
they're just reluctant, or they're trying to figure out this process the same way that you're trying to figure them out too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Trying to
absolutely.
be safe. Absolutely. And I think one thing that you said that I thought about was um Lord, I lost it that quick. I think it was I don't know. I lost it. It'll come back to me.
No worries. It's all good. It happens to me all the time, because like when we have these conversations, I'm like, oh, that's good. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, me too.
So I totally get it. I totally get it. Speaking in terms of like building trust, and like you mentioned, like as clinicians, we're often working towards building trust with our clients, but even as professionals, we're learning to trust ourselves throughout this process. And so, how have you learned to trust yourself as a healer, as somebody who's helping somebody unpack their trauma?
Yeah, and that made me think about what I was going to say too, which was trust. So yeah, and I would say trust, even trust with the client. Another thing I was thinking about was humor, right? I really try to bring my personality into the room. Like I'm a goofy, down to earth person. I'm not this stuffy person that's going to be like, yeah, so tell me how you feel. It's going to feel very conversational when we're having it's therapeutic, but it's conversational. And I think that disarms people because they have this preconceived notion of what therapy means and what it looks like. And so I feel like being personable, being yourself allows other people to be themselves as well. And so that kind of ties into how do I trust myself,
Mhm.
which is, I really have gotten to a place where I understand that my job is not to fix anybody. My
Mhm.
job is not to do the work for people. I don't force things anymore. Maybe I did when I first started, where I started when I was, in my mid 20s. And so I felt very young. And I'm like, before then, I had only worked with kids. I was like, I'm not, these grown people with real problems are not going to quote unquote listen to me, right? But I had to understand that I know trauma. Like I've learned trauma, I've studied trauma, I've researched trauma, I've researched relational trauma. That's my jam. And so I know this, but I don't have to know them. I'm
Mm.
not the expert in them. They are the expert in them. I know trauma, you know you. Let's put that information together and figure out, how we got here, where we want to go. And
Wow, you
so
about to make me shout. I'm like, oh, that is so good. Because the way that you describe that is a partnership, very
yeah.
collaborative in nature. And
Mhm.
oftentimes I think clients, they often will fill out an inquiry, they come to their first session, and it's just kind of like, all right, here's what I'm dealing with, fix me. And I tell
Yeah.
clients all the time, like, this is not a white coat kind of situation. Like, I'm
Yeah.
putting you in the expert seat. You're the only person who's been with you 24/7,
Yeah.
7 days a week, all of your entire lifespan. So recognize that you do know yourself better than I can. And so even the way that you laid that out, you, I know trauma. Let's build this partnership so that we can go on this journey together. Now, are we
Absolutely.
gonna always know where we're gonna go? No, it's all
No.
good. But let's be open to what's happening. And I think, like we were talking about, like creating safety, that openness and that
Yeah.
willingness to see what that journey looks like.
Hey y'all, it's Sierra. Make sure you head over to shoplegacysbks.com to check out the latest gear. As always, we have the classic therapy is dope crew neck as well as tees. So head over to cop your crew neck today. It comes in heather navy, that cardinal red, as well as that beautiful gold that we love to see. So head over to purchase yours, not only for yourself, but also for a friend as well. And we are offering free shipping right now. So head over to shoplegacysbks.com to cop all of your therapy's dope gear and check out all the other additional merch as well.
Absolutely. I think me knowing I've because I'm in academia too, and so a part of it is what I've learned from like stepping into that arena of academia is you have to learn the why. You have to learn the pros and cons of each of these modalities that we are using, right? So I need to know why this works, and I need to know why it doesn't work. I need to know why change happens. You should know that regardless, but you kind of have to be an expert in it in order to teach other people how to use these modalities. And so a part of me understanding how change happens. So that's something even for newer clinicians coming in, I always tell them, yeah, you can have these certain modalities, but also do you know how change happens for your clients? You know, I always educate my clients on the stages of change. What stage are you in? Right? Because depending on what stage you're in, that's how I need to know how to approach you. Somebody who's very self-aware, they might not need all of those things. They might be ready to like get to work. I just need to know what to do. I did all the therapy up to this point. I need the next steps. And so that has helped me feel more equipped to and confident in my role as a therapist, is just understanding how change kind of happens and knowing what modalities I use to help my clients.
Yes, and for anybody who's listening in terms of like stages of change, what Shakenya is referring to are the trans-theoretical stages of change. It's a model. And so you have several phases. You have the pre-contemplation stage, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. And oftentimes, and this is, it works heavily, especially for individuals who are within the substance abuse counseling space, but it can be applied across all areas of therapy in general. But if a client does not see that what they're experiencing is a problem, then the work that we do may become like null and void. It's just like, why are we even here if you don't even recognize how these presenting concerns are impacting you? But if you're like preparing, or if you're ready to take action, then we could take off and keep it moving. Now, obviously, we encourage clients to come back if they are in the maintenance phase, which is pretty cool. And that's super exciting because we still get to serve you in that capacity. But knowing where the client is along those stages of changes are very important. And it also helps us because we're not forcing anything on you.
Absolutely. And we're not taking anything personal, right? If our client is not doing, like, they're not ready, it's not that they don't, they don't want to do the work. They're not there yet. Sometimes even when they're in that contemplation stage, like, I know I need to make the changes, but I'm just not, I haven't built up the courage to take that next step in that preparation step, right? So I'm not there yet. And I can educate my clients so they can release some of that shame around, well, why is this person getting better faster than me, right? Maybe you have some complex trauma, and your complex trauma has left you in that contemplation stage a little bit longer, and that's okay. We're going to meet you where you at. We're going to do some more insights, some more building. And so it's good for me as a clinician, and for the supervisees, it's good for them, but it's also good for my clients to kind of know where they are too.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Can you speak to how relational trauma impacts the ability to form healthy relationships, whether in session and even outside of session?
Absolutely. So, when you think about the relational trauma, the biggest one that I've seen is emotional, like, I don't want to know if you want to call it enmeshment, right? Enmeshment, where you are really seeing too much with your caregiver. Like, I am maybe the product of a single mom, or yes, I had a 2-parent household, but I felt everything. I was in that house when daddy was mad, everybody in the house felt it. And so I've learned to be aware, hyper aware of everybody's emotions. I've learned to be, because that's safe. Because when I wasn't, I don't know if I was walking on eggshells into a situation that wasn't safe. And so I always had to. And so what you see now is a lot of people pleasing, a lot of like poor boundaries. I'm trying to comply with people because I just need to disarm everybody around me. And so that's what I see a lot of. What was the question again? Because I don't know if I answered
no,
it.
absolutely. We were talking about how our relational trauma impacts the ability to form healthy relationships both in and outside of session. And some of the things that you mentioned were people pleasing, poor boundaries, and things like that.
Yeah. So we see a lot of, like you talked about, these things can be great as far as creating leaders, creating people that are emotionally in tune to other people. So you're very giving, and that person is going to show up for other people. But on the flip side of that, you're not easily like vulnerable with people, or you're quick to run if somebody shows you that this may not be safe. You might shut down, you might run, you might do whatever. For my men, that I work with, and it's so interesting that my men be so invested in therapy. They come and they be like, listen, I will do this my life if I can, because this is the space where I finally feel safe to talk about these things. We talk about everything. We talk about sex. We talk about, because that's not talked about enough. And so even when that relational trauma in men and sexual dysfunction, it ain't talked about enough, but it's a thing. A lot of anxiety, a lot of men holding things in, and it comes out somatically. Whether you can't get an erection, or you can't finish, or you shut down, you show narcissistic tendencies, because of the narcissistic tendencies can look like, sleeping with multiple women because internally you feel very inferior. It could be a lot of things. And so to answer your question, it comes out in a number of ways in relationships, but at the root of it is, why do I keep, like, I'm successful in most areas of my life, but why do I keep struggling? Why do I attract the same woman? Why do I attract the same man? Why am I always feel like I'm taking on projects? Why can't I regulate my emotions? I shut down a lot. I can't have conversations. I run. That's how I see a lot of relational trauma kind of show up outside of, in the space that we have, as well as outside. And I would say in the space, it makes it where some of my clients can be heavily dependent on this space, because it's so hard for them to talk. And so we do a lot of conversations around finding safe people in your life that you can also practice vulnerability with and build that connection to, because safety is huge for them.
Absolutely. One of the things, especially with DBT, because that's a modality that I lean heavily on, like we often say that we're trying to work ourselves out of a job, because essentially we don't want a client to build like a dependency on like our services. We want to make sure that we are taking what we're learning in session and modeling it, or at least duplicating it in other areas of our life. And if you need us, cool. That's dope. But for the most part, we want to make sure that you're able to actively apply these things outside in real time. And so even where you're talking about making sure that clients have a safe space, yes, let's have a safe space here, but let this not be your only safe space. There's other places like support groups, group therapy, like interest groups as well, maybe even like creating family functions. There's always ways for you to attempt to replicate these safe spaces. So as they're learning about themselves, they're also learning about themselves in relation to people, and seeing who or what can create safety for them in the outside world.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I see a lot of perfectionism in dating, which is not talked about a lot. Like, people with expectations, people like perfectionism, imposter feelings around dating. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do this. I haven't been successful. I haven't seen what success looks like. This preconceived notion that because I grew up in a 2-parent household, somehow I'm equipped. But in reality, I don't want my relationship to look nothing like what I saw growing up, because it felt very like cold and maybe hostile and unsure. I was on eggshells. So no, I don't want that.
Immediately what you're talking about, it makes me, it reminds me of Erickson's stages of development for psychosocial development. And that first stage, it's trust versus mistrust. And like I always remind clients of that first stage, because like in that stage, this is where we're learning most about ourselves in relation to like our caregivers and our parents, because they're our first form of contact. They're our first point of contact to the outside world. And so if our parents are loving and genuine and caring and just like very wholesome, then we grow up to believe that the world is similar to that love is abundant. But if we have those relationships with our caregivers where it's just like, negative, like they're tearing you down, they're very destructive, like unaffirming, we start to feel like the world is that same way. And it also serves as like a barrier for us to be able to learn how to become self-sufficient and to
Mhm.
learn how to make decisions for ourselves and things of that nature. So I can imagine
Absolutely.
even with relational trauma, how that trauma stunts our ability to be able to be confident in the decisions that
Yes.
we make, to be confident in who we are as human beings, to be confident in the relationships that we have outside of those particular relationships as well.
Absolutely. That confidence piece is so yeah, you are spot on. Even when I talked about giving, bridging this bridge between, hey, this can't be a forever thing, right? Because if you have a client that has never made a decision or has never been affirmed before, this can be very intoxicating for them to be in a space where, oh my gosh, like I'm being affirmed, this person is safe, I know what to expect when I come in here. Oh, I'm gonna do this all day, every day. I'm not judged. I can say and talk about whatever. That can be very addictive, and that's why I I think that's my theory around the men I work with, why they are so like consistent and like dedicated to this process, because for a lot of them, we have conversations like, what do you talk about with you? I even asked my husband this. I'm like, what do you and your boys talk about? They don't talk about nothing. Like they talk about the game. They talk about That's what they talk about, the game. It's very surface level. They don't really go deep. And so that is their safe space to do so. So I would say yes. This like I can't make decisions for myself is huge.
Absolutely. Thank you for showcasing that. Oftentimes, when I speak to other clinicians, they primarily focus on like their Black female clients, and obviously, shout out to the women. We love us, Black Girl
Yeah,
Power,
absolutely.
everything like that. But our Black men also need safe spaces, and so I hope if you are a Black male, please find yourself a therapist who
Mhm.
resonates with the space that you're currently in and affirms you, but most importantly, don't be afraid to do that work with your homeboys, to be that one friend in the group to
Man,
spark those
having conversations.
conversations.
Please, this is look, public service announcement, man. Please start that conversation with your friends about, hey, bro, how you doing? Like, how you really doing? I heard, I know you and such just had a baby. How's that going for you? Like, and really ask. Because sometimes you be like, how are you? They're gonna be like, I'm good, bro, da 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 da, and we're gonna keep it moving. But like really ask and yeah, because y'all need safe spaces to say what is going on. Yeah. And this could be a whole nother conversation. But one thing I really don't see men talk about enough is just though that internal struggle of insecurities when it
Mm,
comes to dating and relationships. And it is showing up as perfectionism in their dating with, it's not that you don't want to get married. You've been with your girl for 5 years, but baby, you are afraid of taking that leap because the messages that you've gotten either directly or indirectly have been that marriage is rough or women change or things happen. And so more normal conversations around insecurities for each other.
absolutely. Or the belief that
Mm.
like if you don't feel like you can't provide, then like don't, like you need to like minimum wait 6, 7 years to get married, or until they feel like they are like this ultimate provider. They
Financially.
take that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So all of those like gender norms and like all of those like socio-cultural messaging, that's so important. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. That's a whole different conversation, but
Yeah,
it's
for
all
sure.
good. No worries. Shakenya, can you let the people know a little bit about all the things that you have going on, especially Trust to
Yeah.
Change as well?
Yeah. So because of this, like I saw this trend of my clients when they were very heavily dependent on that one-on-one space because it felt so safe. was like, listen, I need to do something. I feel like if I can just get these group of women or these group of men together, like maybe if they met each other, they would be, but of course, ethically, you can't do that. I can't have them meet each other because confidentiality and all of those things. I was like, let me create a group. Let me create a group. I do have a group practice. Let me create a group for trauma resolution group. And I think when people hear trauma, they think about the very extreme cases of trauma. But most of the clients I do have in these groups have dealt with that relational trauma, childhood trauma, and with their primary caregivers. And maybe it's brought up other traumas along the way, because most of my clients have some form of like complex trauma. But yeah, I started a group, and we're on our second cohort this time because the first cohort started a few weeks ago, and I actually got this particular trauma like group approach. I went to Rwanda last year, which is the best thing I could have ever done in my life, to work with trauma survivors from the genocide. And so the second generation, and it was this amazing experience where you did this narrative trauma approach, did a week-long thing. And I'm like, well, if I could take this thing and maybe shift it and pivot it and use it for my clients here, I wonder what that would do. And so the first cohort was kind of like, I told them, y'all the guinea pigs, right? We're gonna figure this out. But it was such an amazing experience. We had extended an extra like week because they was like, listen, we just started. We want to keep going. We just got comfortable and, with each other. And so it was a very beautiful experience of Black women. It ended up being Black women, even though it was for everybody. It ended up being Black women. We started with 8. It ended up being 6 of us. And so we did that group. It was amazing to the point where I did a second cohort, which we're almost full with this cohort. I try to take no more than 8 per cohort, but just a way for them to get together. And they were like, listen, let's exchange numbers. Let's get together outside of this. And I'm like, these are women who don't do that. And I was like, that's a win. That is a beautiful thing. And so it's something that I want to continue to do these groups free for the people at my practice. Anybody who receives services at our practice can participate for free, because again, I just wanted it to be done for them. But people outside can actually join too as well. And so that's something, if anybody out there is interested, we have a cohort now that's about to start. We have a few more spots, and then we will have one in the fall, maybe 1 or 2 in the fall that we'll do. And if it gets to a point where I have to do a workshop, then I'll probably do maybe a workshop about it. But this is what we're doing right now. And we also have a group for men too, because we want to also have a safe space for them as well to kind of get together. It's called Bro, Let's Talk About It.
Ooh, I love it, love it, love it. Yeah, that's
so,
really dope. Yeah. Thank you so much for your commitment to creating safe spaces for us. We truly, truly appreciate it. Can you let the people know where they can find you and where your practice is located, and if you are accepting any new clients?
So I'm not accepting new clients right now. I'm sorry, y'all. But we do have other very highly qualified clinicians at the practice. It's Trust to Change, TRUST, the number 2, and then change, CHANGE. So you can go to trusttochange.com and just visit us there. We have, other women who all work around very similar type issues. So yeah, that's how you can find us. You can find me on social media. You can find us on social media, Trust to Change as well, on Instagram, Twitter, that we don't be on there all the time, and Facebook. You can also find me on Instagram at heal_with_Ken. I do some with mental health, but also it's just my life too. I try to do both. And so that's how you can find me.
Absolutely. Y'all, please make sure that you are staying in contact with Shakenya as well as Trust to Change at all of the handles that she noted. They'll also be noted in the description box below via the podcast as well as the YouTube channel. So definitely stay connected. Shakenya, it has been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for being on here. The podcast is named the Legacy Speaks Podcast. And I ask this question all the time of every single guest. What would you like your legacy to say about you?
So my legacy, I would definitely like for my legacy to be that I helped Black people in whatever capacity that may look like. Like I stood in my purpose, whether I created safe spaces. That's it. I created safe spaces for Black people, whether it was in business, the clinicians that work under me, supervision, teaching, therapy, coaching, my mentees, my cousins, my uncles, everybody. I just want people to be Black people, people in general. But of course, I go real hard for Black people. And so that's what I want my legacy to be.
Absolutely. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you for your commitment to that. Y'all, if there was anything that stood out to you, please make sure that you are dropping a comment, hitting that like button, and also tagging us in any particular snippet that resonates with you. Once again, my name is Sierra Hillsman, licensed professional counselor and emotional wellness coach. Stay tuned for the next episode. And if you are waiting for the next episode, go back to our montage of all the amazing episodes from previously before. You can definitely stay connected via Legacy SBKS on everything. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and visit legacyspks.com. Until next time.